Hey, welcome back to the Model Train Outsider, Episode 7. And I am Anthony Dodge. And so am I. So, what are we going to talk about today, older me? Well, since you asked, today I want to talk about the potential money pit that getting into model trains can become and things you gotta look out for if you're gonna get into this hobby. Uh-oh. Here it comes. Yeah, here it comes because you had no idea what you were getting into. Natter. You had no idea what you were getting into. You didn't know what you were doing. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, I bought one train. And it was the cheapest train you own. You went Mr. Big Bucks and bought all the expensive trains and the fancy ones. That's not on me. That's on you. Yeah, well, that still makes it your fault. You knew me, us, you know I'm a bells and whistle guy. You know I like all the tech. You knew what would happen. No, not really. This addiction's on you. I bought one train. You are the one that went and got hooked. So stop blaming me. Stop looking at me and look at yourself. My head hurts. Got him. Anyhow. To avoid potential inner fighting that you see me going through, let's talk about where costs are, is this an expensive hobby, and ways to avoid it becoming a money pit. Anybody in this hobby knows that model trains are considered an old man's hobby. It's also considered a dying hobby, especially in the United States. In 1975, in my hometown here in Toledo, Ohio, we had 11 different model train shops. I mean, shops that just dealt with model trains. The last one just closed earlier this year. The closest model train shop that dealt with my particular hobby, German HOAC scale, just closed earlier this year. And as I mentioned in another video, now I have to drive an hour and a half if I want to shop in a store that sells anything I might need. I do all my shopping online. Anyhow, so apart from the inconvenience, the reputation is this hobby is a money pit. It's expensive. And it is. But there are ways to actually make it not that expensive, because any hobby is expensive. If you play video games, you're going to spend $200, $300, $400 on a system. You're going to buy specialty controllers. If you play online, you're going to get a big gaming computer, and that's going to be expensive. And then every game, every downloadable content, those DLCs, those add-ons, all that stuff adds up. You're into fishing. Are you going to buy a $75 El Cheapo rod at Walmart? Or are you going to go to Cabela's or some other major outfitters and get a high quality rod? And then you're going to buy different types of strings for different type of fishing, your lures, licensing, boat rentals, the cost of going fishing, etc., etc. Whatever you're into is expensive. Bowling balls. All right, you're going to go to the lanes and you're going to rent. Games are $5, $6 each. 3 games in a night, that's $20. That doesn't sound like a lot until you do it multiple times or you join leagues. Expense. Model trains are no different. Now, I actually want to try to keep this shorter than I could, so let's just look at the basics. First of all, here are a list of the issues, the factors you have to pay attention to avoid this becoming a money pit. These are the price factors for the model train hobby. Number one, what's going to determine how much money you spend is the size. I did a video on this. Are you going to do G scale? That's the biggest, and it's also going to be the most expensive. The track's more expensive, the models are more expensive, and we won't even talk about the space you need. Are you going to do HO scale, the most common scale? If you go down to tabletop or even N scale, you might save a little money as well as space, but we're talking about money here. The second expense is, what type of trains are you going to model? For example, modeling European trains in America is much more expensive than modeling American trains. You can go to any toy store or Walmart and buy an El Cheapo, Lionel, Tyco, some imitation brand model train kit for 30, 40, 50 bucks in HO scale, and you'll have track and train and you're ready to go. You want European trains on nicer track, you're going to spend more money. What are you looking for? The third is, from whom do you buy your model trains? Which company? There are companies that emphasize expense. We pay a premium price to buy models from these companies because they're considered the highest quality, and they put more detail, more expensive mechanicals into their trains, and you're going to pay a lot more for them. Some companies like Pico in Germany, this is again my European hobby, have multiple levels. They have the more expensive expert level, the collector level, the beginner's level. So many companies will have different levels of price points, as they're called, for those. What your train's made out of, the materials, that's going to affect. Is it going to be plastic, or are you going to be all metal? All metal's going to be more expensive. Plastic's going to be cheaper. The fourth factor you have to consider is, what do you want your model train to do? What functions and accessories do you want this train to have? I am, as keeps being noted, a bells and whistles guy. I want as many functions. I want all the working lights. I want all the cabins in the passenger cars lit up. I want the conductor whistle and the horns and the sounds of the brakes hitting. And you can add functions. But when you go into those functions, they're going to cost more money. If you're happy with a light, the headlights going forward and the taillights in the back, and you don't really worry about the sound, then you're not going to spend a lot of money on your trains. What you want your trains to do is going to dictate how much money you spend. And even then, there are cheaper ways around that. Lastly, how big are you going? If you're just going to run a loop on a table, you're not going to spend that much money. If you're going to build a giant layout in your basement that's going to recreate the Black Forest in 1920s Germany, you're going to spend more money. What are you going to be happy with? And that's the key. You don't have to spend a lot of money if you just like trains. Most people, once they get trains, they might get bored with it going in a circle. That was me as a kid. My trains were boring. Had they done what they do today, I might have stayed in the hobby or gotten into the hobby at a much younger age. All right, so let's talk about these. If you look at these pictures, here is an HO scale train, a German ICE. I'm keeping it German because that's what I model. This is HO scale. Look at these different price points from an HO scale and this N scale. Same train model, but there is a difference in price. 2 starter sets, and there is a smaller price for the N scale. It's a smaller train, doesn't have as many functions, track is smaller, and therefore it's going to be cheaper. So, in general, N scale is going to be cheaper. So size is going to be a determining factor. Another thing to look at is, obviously, I mentioned buying American trains. Well, I don't buy American trains. I do European trains. So you can go anywhere and buy American trains for cheap. I've already covered that. But companies can determine the price, as well as accessories. So I will cover this in these set of pictures here. Here is a locomotive. This is a Deutsche Bahn, the German rail system, BR 1465. BR simply means Baureihe, which means model, the type of locomotive it is. Here are different companies' versions of this train with also more functions. For example, here is a Brava version. Brava is a German company that makes higher end trains. Now, this does not have a lot of functions, but it does have quite a few. It's almost $400. Now, here's a newly released Märklin version of the same exact train with the same number of functions. But the Brava is all metal, the Märklin not all metal, still very good quality. A little bit less, about $300 and some dollars. Now, here is the company Pico. All the way down to, on sale here, marked down to $95. It doesn't have any functions other than the lights, but it's a model train. It looks cool. It's plastic, hard plastic with some metal. The engine in it is probably maybe not as, the motor in it is probably not as high quality as the Märklin or the Brava, but it's a nice starting point if you want an IC2 German high-speed locomotive. There it is. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles that the Brava and the Märklin new version have, but if you don't care, if you just like lights and maybe one running sound, there it is. And if you look on eBay, of course, you might find a used one for even cheaper. But that's the difference. Same model, 3 different versions, $300 difference in price. So can it be expensive? Yes. Can you do it for cheaper? Yes. So yes, this can be an expensive hobby, but there are ways around that. So, briefly, what are my tips for cutting cost? Well, I've already talked about it. My cost-cutting tips are this. Number 1, limit yourself to an era and a style. And what I mean by that is, now, if you love trains, ignore that. But if you pick a particular era, and see my video on scale and era, if you pick a particular era 6 for me, that immediately limits the number of trains you're going to buy. I see some beautiful era 3, era 4 trains. I mean, they are beautiful, amazing pieces of art. But I'm sticking with era 6. I don't buy those trains. In fact, I specifically originally limited myself to only trains I've ridden on in Germany. That really limited. But then I saw those rail jets and had to buy them. But they're still era 6, and I do plan on riding one, so I can justify it even to the missus. We'll be riding a railjet this summer, we hope. Anyhow, so if you limit yourself to an era, that might limit what trains you buy. But also a style. Are you going to do steam? Well, that's going to limit you to an era as well. Or electric and diesel of the modern era. But limit yourself, at least to begin with, until you're fully into the hobby. Look at what you like. What appeals to you? Google videos on model steam locomotives. If you're going to get into model trains, what attracted you to it? That's what you're going to stick with. So whether it's steam, or you like the modern electrical trains, or a mixture of diesel and electric, or look at that. Another factor that will help save you money is shop around. Obviously, with the internet, you can comparative shop. However, you ask a million people what their favorite shops are, you'll get a million different answers. I did my homework on this one. The cheapest shops for me, I have found. In fact, I have found that there are a couple of shops in Germany that I can buy from and get them faster and cheaper than I can from here in America, because the American stores mark up the price and they have to wait till they're released in Europe, and then they got to get them in stock. It takes anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months for the stuff to get into their shelves, and I've already had it. From the time the German shops get it, which is usually the day of release, the model shop I go to, ModellbahnShop Lippe, is my favorite. I get it in 4 days from Germany. I pay a higher shipping, but it's worth it, especially when you're spending that kind of money on a train. So where you buy, for example, there is a shop, J&J's Hobbies, from just outside Boston. He's the cheapest place I can get track from. My type of track, the Seaglice. Not the big stores, not even my shop in Germany can get it any cheaper to me than I can from this guy in Boston. If you're into Märklin's C-Track and you're here in the United States, I'll put the link below and you can check his site out. He is really good. He's got a great order to delivery time. So shop around. Look at where you're going. Look at where you're going to buy. And then, outside of eBay and Amazon, just go to garage sales and go to train shows. If you're near a city that has a couple a year or one a year, or you can again Google and look up the nearest train shows to you, go. Even though I am not into American trains, which is what 95% of American train shows do, I will find the occasional dealer in European houses and buildings or train cars or whatever, but you can get great deals on all sorts of little things, adding cars to your scenery, adding trees, the people, if you want to add that, all the little stuff. Buy used. You can get your things for cheaper, buy used, plus if you have questions, a lot of the dealers there can answer them for you. So, in conclusion, yes, this hobby can be expensive, but a lot of it is choice. I bought this ICE3 and it lists for $699. I paid $500 for it through my model train club from Germany, and then another $30 for shipping. Now this has all the bells and whistles, and it's from Märklin, which means it's going to be a good quality. The same train from Pico as a starter set in HO scale, and from a company called Mahano. Look at the price differences. You want to get started? You can pick any level. You can do this hobby cheaply if you pay attention. I've elected to not necessarily go cheaply. I don't even want to tell you what I've spent on some of my trains, but I bought some cheap ones as well. You can do the same thing. This hobby does not have to be that expensive. But again, it's unfair to say this is an expensive hobby because somebody bought a train that was $400. You can go to a garage sale and pick up model trains for $10, $15 HO scale. And if you have a little bit of handyman, you can clean them up yourself, you can fix them yourself, get them running again, or maybe they're already running, just clean them up. And you're not going to expense, because if you're into trains, there's a way to do it cheaply. Take your time, look around, don't jump in blindly like we did. You can do it much cheaper than the reputation is. All right, So, that was episode 7. Is it a money pit? Please, if you're finding any of these remotely interesting, share them, hit the subscribe button. And I'm going to keep making them, whether anybody's watching or not, just because I like to talk to people, especially model trained people. So, you have a good time, and I will see you back for episode 8. See ya. Natter, 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 natter. Blah, 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 blah.